Probably once a year, my family, extended family, will make the trip into the Cataloochee Basin, deep in the heart of the Smoky Mountain National Park. Sometimes we'll drive and take a little Jeep trail that'll get us around and into that remote area, and sometimes we'll walk, which is actually shorter than driving all the way around. And when we get there, we normally do a couple of things. One is we will take some time admiring, looking at the elk, which have recently been reintroduced into the Smokies, and then we'll spend some time looking at kind of the surrounding area, the barns that are still standing up, and then we'll often go look at Palmer Chapel. Palmer Chapel is the church that sits in that area from long ago that served this Cataloochee Valley community that at its peak was about 1,200 people who lived in this remote valley. I always kind of visit this church and look at it with wonder, thinking about the baptisms and the funerals, the community meetings, and the countless potluck gatherings that were centered in this important church for this little community. But for very few exceptions, there are no homes left in that particular area, in the Cataloochee Valley Basin. The problem being is that when that area was turned into the park, all those people were told they'd have to leave, and so they left, and then the government people left, and then they all moved back into their homes, and then the government people came in, and they were forced to leave again, and then they moved back in their house, and so finally the government tore down the houses so people couldn't keep moving back in, so that all that is left of this vibrant little community is this church that was built in 1898. It is, for me, an iconic place. It's kind of funny that it's so important for me in kind of my romanticized idea of what church is all about, because I've never been a part of this kind of church. I've never lived in this kind of community, yet it is, for me, emblematic of the archetype of what church is supposed to be. I love the idea of church being the heart and center of the community's common life. I've always imagined God's people as being the spokes of a wagon wheel. And the church plays the important and stabilizing role of the hub at the center to which everybody is connected. When I try to picture the type of church that is the hub of the community, when I create this mental image, it's a small one-room place where many generations have worshiped, where you can find multiple generations still worshiping together in the same pews. When the news of last week's shooting came to my attention, and I began to learn more about the church and the community of Sutherland Springs, Texas. Before I saw any pictures, before I really had a lot of details, I imagined in my mind, similar to what I experienced at Palmer Chapel, I imagine in my mind a small schoolhouse-looking building. And then I began to learn more, as we all did, about that town of 600 people. First Baptist Church is the only church in that community. And it's the kind of place where, even on that day, multiple generations sit in the pews together as they worship on Sunday morning. It is the kind of place where I imagine it was the hub of their community, of their social life, of their common life together. And I fantasize it's the place where hectic and confusing issues of the world seem distant and remote when they enter the doors of that holy space. And I think it's for that reason that an occurrence like this shooting that happened last Sunday, a week ago today, touches us so deeply. Because it disturbs and it shatters our sacred and time-held beliefs about certain things. We have all sorts of those beliefs that you and I have all the time, that are kind of more fantasy than they are reality, but they shape what we believe about the world, and we take comfort in them at times. Fantasies like children are incapable of sin, or the fantasy that everybody was better off in the 1950s, or in this case, that churches are untouched havens away from human difficulty and human conflict. But wait a minute. Even talking about that makes me anxious. I know it makes some of you anxious. What's wrong with this image of church? Shouldn't church be a safe place? Shouldn't churches be the one place where people can go and feel safe and separated from the conflicts of the world? I want that to be true, but no, I don't think that's the case. I want it to be true. I want church to somehow be the place where all of the struggles of the world melt away and we've entered into Shangri-La as we come through the doors of the church. But even as I begin to look internally and wrestle with that desire inside myself, I become aware that one of the underlying precepts behind my own desire for church to be a safe harbor away from the conflicted world is a darker side, which is an unspoken belief that violence in the world is okay as long as it doesn't reach the church, or as long as it doesn't reach a couple of places that we want to consider sacred and sacrosanct. The tragedy of last Sunday is not that there was a mass shooting in a church. The tragedy of last Sunday is that there was a mass shooting anywhere in the world. The shocking news is not that the last place of sacred innocence was marred by this tragedy. The shocking news is this kind of horrific occurrence is coming close to being the norm in our society. When violence reaches within the walls of a small town church in Texas, we are right to feel that something in our society must change. When violence rains down from above on unsuspecting concert goers in Las Vegas, Nevada, we are right when we cry out that something must change. When violence cuts short the lives of children at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut, we are right when the pain in our hearts drives us to realize that something must change. But it doesn't stop there. When an innocent child is sleeping and a stray bullet finds them in their sleep, in their bed, in their home, in their room, we must not be silent. And when the violence finds the neighborhood that we would prefer to forget or avoid, our Christian indignation must not found to be silent. A part of our service that we do monthly, we do the service Peace in Our Time once a month. It's our way of responding to the pervasive gun violence that is a part of our culture all the time. And one of the things we do, we're going to do it this morning, actually after the 11:15 service, one of the things we do is we gather around for that little informal service is Elizabeth collects the names of those who have died by gun violence just in our state, not in the nation, just in our state. This month, as we do that this afternoon after the 11:15, this month because we would normally do it next week, we're cutting it a week shorter. So we're getting 1 week fewer statistics in our month than we would normally get. 53 people have died in the last couple of weeks from gun violence in our state. It is time for our society to change. It's time for us to no longer accept that background violence that we have come to tolerate. We can change. Our society can change. We can do something about the violence. It only takes speaking up and speaking out. Let the world know with certainty that we will no longer tolerate the senseless taking of God-created lives in our churches, in our schools, in our public spaces, in our poorest neighborhoods or our richest homes. We will not tolerate it. We will not be silent. We will not rest until all people can live in safety and without fear. Let God's peace reign. Let peace become our new norm. Let us see every single person in this world as a sister and brother created in the image of God. Let this be our hope. Let this be our prayer. Let this be our solemn vow. Amen.